lives reshaped the world around them. Today, we bring you the stories of three extraordinary women: Katherine of Aragon, whose resolve defined a kingdom, Anne Boleyn, whose ambition altered England's destiny, and Katherine Howard, whose youth met a tragic fate. Let's begin with Katherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII. Katherine of Aragon was born on December 16, 1485, in the palace of Alcalá de Henares, just outside of Madrid. Her birth name was Catalina, but she became known as Katherine after moving to England. Her father, King Ferdinand II of Aragon, ruled the northeastern part of Spain, including cities like Barcelona, Zaragoza, and Valencia. He also controlled several Mediterranean islands and parts of southern Italy, including Naples. Katherine's mother, Queen Isabella I of Castile, ruled much of the rest of Spain. Katherine's parents played an essential role in the completion of the Reconquista, the effort to reclaim Spain from Muslim rule. By the time of Katherine's birth, the last Muslim stronghold, Granada, was still under Muslim control, but her parents completed the reconquest in 1492. Katherine's heritage was unique because she was descended from both the English and Spanish royal families. On her mother's side, she was connected to the English House of Lancaster through John of Gaunt, a son of King Edward III of England. As a royal princess, Katherine received a formal education from distinguished scholars, including the Dominican priests Pascual de Ampudia and Andres de Morales, as well as the Italian humanist brothers Alessandro and Antonio Geraldini. Her education focused on Latin, European languages, history, and philosophy. As the daughter of the Catholic monarchs, Katherine also received a strong religious education, studying the Bible and other important Christian texts. Her upbringing in two powerful royal families prepared her for a life of influence, although her most significant events were yet to come in England. Katherine of Aragon's early education was shaped by the royal and intellectual environment around her. As the daughter of Queen Isabella I of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon, she was trained to be a learned and cultured princess. Her education was deeply rooted in the Catholic faith, as both her parents were known for their devotion to the Church and for championing Catholicism across Spain. Katherine was tutored by esteemed scholars such as the Dominican priests Pascual de Ampudia and Andres de Morales. These scholars emphasized the study of Latin, which was the key language of scholarship during the Renaissance. Katherine also studied European languages, ensuring that she could communicate across the courts of Europe, an essential skill for a royal marriage. Her education was well-rounded, including subjects like history, law, and philosophy. As a member of two prominent European royal families, Katherine was also well-versed in royal diplomacy and the importance of maintaining family alliances. Her connection to the English royal family through her mother, Isabella, was crucial for her later life in England, where her eventual marriage to Prince Arthur of Wales would cement the union between Spain and England. Katherine's education and royal upbringing prepared her for the challenges she would face as a queen, though it was her persistence, intelligence, and commitment to her role that would define her legacy. By the late 1480s, when Katherine was still a young child, her parents, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, had already begun negotiating a marriage alliance between their daughter and Prince Arthur of Wales, the eldest son of King Henry VII of England. This was part of a broader strategy to strengthen the relationship between Spain and England, especially in light of Spain's growing rivalry with France over control of the Italian peninsula. In the year 1489, Rodrigo González de Puebla, a Spanish diplomat, was sent to England to discuss the details of the proposed marriage. Both sides were eager to seal the alliance as tensions with France were rising, and a union between Spain and England could shift the balance of power in Europe. However, the marriage negotiations were delayed, primarily due to disagreements over Katherine's dowry and how her household would be maintained once she arrived in England. Despite the breakdown in negotiations in 1489, a key diplomatic agreement was reached that same year, the Treaty of Medina del Campo. This treaty formalized an alliance between Spain and England, though it did not immediately settle the marriage between Catherine and Prince Arthur. Still, the treaty set the stage for future discussions and provided a foundation for further negotiations. As Catherine grew older, her education continued alongside the diplomatic discussions about her marriage. By the time she reached her early teens, the marriage with Prince Arthur was once again a topic of focus. Catherine of Aragon's marriage to Prince Arthur, heir to the English throne, was a momentous event in European diplomacy. In the autumn of 1501, Catherine, at the age of 16, traveled from Spain to England to marry Arthur. She landed in Plymouth on October 2nd, and after a lengthy procession through southern England, they arrived in London on November 12th. The grand wedding ceremony took place on November 14th at St. Paul's Cathedral, marking the official union of the two royal families. However, the joy of their marriage was short-lived. Despite sharing a bed during the following months, Catherine and Arthur never fully consummated their marriage. In the spring of 1502, both contracted the sweating sickness, a mysterious illness that was widespread at the time. While Catherine survived, Arthur passed away on April 2nd, leaving Catherine a widow at the age of 16. Arthur's sudden death had profound implications for both Spain and England. Catherine, now a widow in a foreign land, faced the uncertainty of her future. Her marriage to Arthur had been part of a diplomatic arrangement, and his death left her position in limbo. Her parents, Ferdinand and Isabella, quickly began negotiations for Catherine to marry Arthur's younger brother, Prince Henry, who was only 12 years old at the time. Despite the early loss, Catherine's determination and resilience would guide her through the years ahead as she navigated the political complexities of her new life in England. After the death of Prince Arthur, Catherine of Aragon's position in England became uncertain, but her parents, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, were determined to secure their alliance with England. Soon after Arthur's passing in the spring of 1502, discussions began about Catherine's potential marriage to Arthur's younger brother, Prince Henry, who would later become King Henry VIII. Though Henry was still a child, both the Spanish and English courts saw the importance of maintaining the marriage alliance. In the years that followed, Catherine remained in England, living at Durham House in London. She was not formally married to Prince Henry, but her continued presence in England and the support of her Spanish ambassadors kept her role significant. Catherine's situation was complicated by the young age of Henry and the political challenges faced by both kingdoms. While she remained a widow, she continued her education, learning English and maintaining ties with her Spanish heritage, which she remained loyal to throughout her life. Despite the uncertainties surrounding her future, Catherine's importance as the widow of the Prince of Wales remained strong. In England, she became a symbol of stability and the potential to strengthen ties with Spain. Her intelligence, piety, and strong sense of duty also made her a respected figure in the English court, even though she was not yet formally married to Henry. Catherine's resilience during this period set the stage for the eventual marriage to Henry, which would have profound consequences for both her and English history. In June of 1509, after years of political negotiations and personal challenges, Catherine of Aragon married Prince Henry, who was now King Henry VIII of England. Catherine had been in England for nearly 8 years, and this marriage marked a new chapter in her life. At the time of their marriage, Catherine was 23, and Henry was just a few days shy of his 18th birthday. Despite their age difference, the union was a significant political and diplomatic moment for both Spain and England. Catherine's role as queen was not just ceremonial. She quickly became a trusted advisor to Henry, and she played a key role in the early years of his reign. Her influence was evident in her involvement in important political decisions and in her active role in representing Spanish interests at the English court. In the early years of their marriage, Catherine was also a strong supporter of Henry's military ambitions, particularly during his wars with France and Scotland. As queen, Catherine was also a patron of the arts, education, and religion. She supported many intellectuals, including the humanist scholars of her time, and advocated for the education of women. Catherine's influence extended beyond domestic affairs as she worked to strengthen the relationship between England and Spain, particularly through diplomatic channels. Catherine's early political influence in England was undeniable, and she remained a central figure in the royal court for several years, guiding her husband's reign. Catherine of Aragon's marriage to King Henry VIII faced increasing challenges, particularly in the early years of their union. One of the most significant difficulties was her struggle to produce a male heir. Catherine experienced multiple pregnancies during the first decade of her marriage, but most ended in miscarriage or stillbirth. Her only surviving child, a daughter named Mary, was born in 1516. The failure to produce a male heir put immense pressure on Catherine, especially as Henry became more determined to secure the Tudor dynasty through a male successor. In addition to the pressure from her miscarriages, Henry's infidelity added another layer of strain to their marriage. By the year 1514, Henry had begun his first known affair, and over the years, he would have several more. The most significant of these was with Anne Boleyn, a lady-in-waiting at court, who eventually caught Henry's attention and became the focal point of his desire for a divorce. Henry's growing dissatisfaction with Catherine's inability to produce a male heir led him to question the validity of their marriage. In the year 1527, he sought an annulment on the grounds that his marriage to Catherine had been unlawful due to her previous marriage to his brother Arthur. This became known as the Great Matter. Despite Catherine's protests and attempts to secure support from her nephew, Emperor Charles V, Henry's desire for an annulment would lead to a crisis in English politics, religion, and society. As Catherine of Aragon's marriage to Henry VIII deteriorated, her life took a more isolated and challenging turn. After years of being denied an annulment, Catherine was effectively separated from the court and forced to live in various residences, including Kimbolton House. Despite being stripped of her title as queen, she continued to assert her rightful place as the legitimate wife of Henry, refusing to accept his marriage to Anne Boleyn. Her steadfastness in defending her marriage and her daughter's right to the throne became a hallmark of her legacy. During her final years, Catherine became increasingly estranged from her former husband and the court. However, she remained deeply connected to her faith, and her correspondence with influential figures, including her nephew Charles V and the Pope, reflected her continued influence in European affairs. Catherine's health deteriorated over time, and by the autumn of 1535, she was gravely ill. She died on January 7, 1536, at the age of 50, from what is believed to have been a form of cancer. Though she passed away in relative obscurity, Catherine's legacy would live on, particularly through her daughter, Mary, who would eventually become Queen of England. Catherine of Aragon is remembered as a strong, intelligent, and principled woman who fought for her beliefs against overwhelming odds. Her story is one of resilience, determination, and unwavering devotion to her faith and her daughter's future. Anne Boleyn was born in around 1501 at Blickling Hall in Norfolk. When Anne was a child, her family moved to Hever Castle in Kent, which became their main home. Anne's father, Sir Thomas Boleyn, was a well-educated man who could speak French fluently. He was very ambitious and was appointed by King Henry VII to be deputy warden for customs at Calais, making him a powerful courtier. Anne's great-grandfather, Sir Geoffrey Boleyn, had been the Lord Mayor of London in 1457 and had bought both Blickling Hall and Hever Castle. Anne's mother, Elizabeth Howard, was the daughter of the Earl of Surrey, who later became the second Duke of Norfolk. Elizabeth was a noblewoman who worked as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Catherine of Aragon. The Howard family had strong connections to the royal family, partly because Anne's uncle, the 3rd Duke of Norfolk, had married Anne of York, the daughter of King Edward IV. Anne was raised in an environment of learning, and she and her brother George were known for their intelligence. Anne's education included reading, writing, languages, music, and traditional feminine skills like needlework, singing, and dancing. Although there were rumors about her physical appearance, including claims she had a mole on her neck and an extra finger, her father still chose Anne to represent the family abroad. In 1513, Anne was sent to serve as a lady-in-waiting at the court of Margaret of Austria, regent of the Netherlands. There, Anne quickly gained a reputation for being intelligent and hardworking. Anne Boleyn's early education was important in shaping the woman she would become. Growing up in an influential family, Anne was taught by private tutors in subjects that were considered essential for young women of her status. Her lessons included reading, writing, languages, music, and the more traditionally feminine arts of needlework and dancing. Anne's education set her apart from many others of her time, especially in a society where women's education was often limited. Her father, Sir Thomas Boleyn, was ambitious for his children, especially Anne, and took great care in ensuring that she received a high-quality education. This was not only for her personal benefit, but also to help her succeed in the competitive world of the royal court. Anne's time in the Netherlands under Margaret of Austria provided her with further cultural and intellectual experiences. She became fluent in French, which would later serve her well in her roles at the courts of France and England. Anne's early education, paired with her family's connections, played a crucial role in her rise to power. It made her stand out at the royal courts, where she soon gained a reputation for her intelligence, grace, and wit. These qualities helped her earn the favor of powerful people, setting the stage for her future influence. In 1513, Anne Boleyn left England for the first time, embarking on a journey that would significantly shape her future. She was sent by her father to serve as a lady-in-waiting at the court of Margaret of Austria in Brussels, a prominent figure in Europe at the time. Margaret was the regent of the Netherlands, and her court was known for its sophistication and culture. Anne's time there was pivotal, as she was exposed to the arts, politics, and the customs of foreign courts. Anne's fluency in French, gained during her education, helped her quickly earn the respect of those at Margaret's court. Her intelligence and charm made a strong impression on Margaret, who praised Anne in letters to her father. This praise helped solidify Anne's standing and open doors for her future roles. While serving at Margaret's court, Anne also made her first mark in history through a letter she wrote in French to her father, which remains one of the earliest examples of Anne's personal voice in historical records. Her time in Brussels was important for her personal growth, as she gained confidence in navigating the complex and often treacherous world of European courts. By 1514, Anne had transitioned to a new role, this time in the service of Mary Tudor, the sister of King Henry VIII. When Mary married King Louis XII of France, Anne accompanied her to the French court, where she would remain for several years. During this time, Anne's experiences in the French court played a crucial role in shaping her future, as she learned more about the intricacies of royal life and political maneuvering. Anne Boleyn returned to England in 1522 after spending nearly 9 years in Europe. Her father, Sir Thomas Boleyn, had requested her presence back at the English court, and Anne quickly made a notable return. She joined the household of Queen Katherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII, where she caught the attention of the English court. At court, Anne quickly became known for her elegance, grace, and sharp intelligence. She was considered a fashion icon, admired by many, and her presence caused a stir among those who saw her as a striking contrast to the more traditional women at court. Anne's charisma and charm did not go unnoticed by King Henry, who was beginning to feel dissatisfaction with his marriage to Queen Catherine, largely due to her inability to provide him with a male heir. In March 1522, Anne was chosen to participate in a masque at court, where several women dressed as princesses portrayed various virtues. Anne was assigned the role of Perseverance, symbolizing her strong character. By this time, her sister Mary had been the king's mistress for several years, but Anne, unlike her sister, was determined not to be just another mistress. She refused to be with the king unless it was under the condition of marriage, making her stand out from other women at court. Anne's rise at court, alongside her intelligence and beauty, set the stage for her eventual relationship with King Henry VIII. She had earned the attention of not just the king, but many others in the court, thanks to her distinctive personality and her ambition to secure a powerful marriage. Anne Boleyn's relationship with King Henry VIII began in the mid-1520s and would change the course of English history. By this time, Henry was increasingly frustrated with his marriage to Queen Katherine of Aragon, as Catherine had failed to give him a male heir. When Anne returned to court, she quickly captured Henry's attention, and he began to pursue her with great intensity. At first, Anne resisted Henry's advances. She was determined not to become just another of his mistresses. Instead, she insisted that she would only be with him if they were married, something Henry was initially unwilling to consider. Anne's refusal to become his mistress added to her allure, making her even more desirable in Henry's eyes. This tension between their desire and her refusal to yield became the foundation of their passionate and sometimes tumultuous relationship. Henry, who was known for his determination, became fixated on marrying Anne. His obsession with her was fueled by the idea of securing a male heir, and Anne, despite her early resistance, came to believe that marrying Henry might fulfill both her personal and political ambitions. Their courtship was long and public, with Henry showering Anne with gifts and displaying his affection for her at court. Anne, in turn, began to reciprocate his feelings, though it is unclear whether she ever fully trusted Henry. As the relationship progressed, Henry sought to annul his marriage to Catherine, which led to his break with the Roman Catholic Church. Anne's influence over Henry grew as her reformist views aligned with his desire to create a new church in England. This movement toward religious reform played a key role in their relationship, with Anne supporting Henry's efforts to secure his divorce from Catherine and marry her. Their relationship reached its peak in 1533, when Henry married Anne in a secret ceremony. Despite the secrecy, Anne became Queen of England and was crowned in a grand ceremony. However, the pressure of providing a male heir soon weighed heavily on their marriage. Anne Boleyn's time as Queen of England, though brief, had a lasting impact on both the royal court and English society. After marrying Henry VIII in January 1533, Anne was crowned Queen of England in a grand ceremony. Despite her high status, Anne was never a popular queen, largely due to the controversial nature of her marriage to Henry and her outspoken religious beliefs. Many people at the time still considered Henry's first wife, Katherine of Aragon, the rightful queen, and Anne's role in the divorce only fueled the resentment. As queen, Anne was a key supporter of the Protestant Reformation, which was beginning to take hold in Europe. Her influence over Henry, who was already in the process of separating from the Roman Catholic Church, was significant. Anne encouraged the spread of reformist ideas, particularly the notion that the English Church should be independent from Rome. She also supported the translation of the Bible into English so that it could be read by the common people, which was a radical move at the time. Anne's court was a place of intellectual and religious change. She promoted a more modern and progressive atmosphere at court, where discussions about religion and politics were encouraged. Anne's own religious views were closely aligned with the ideas of the Lutheran Reformation, and she surrounded herself with like-minded individuals, including Thomas Cranmer, who would later become the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Hugh Latimer, a reformist bishop. Anne's religious reforms were controversial, and they often put her at odds with those who remained loyal to Catholic traditions. Despite this, she continued to champion these ideas, using her position as queen to further the cause of religious change. However, Anne's time as queen was overshadowed by her failure to provide Henry with a male heir. This failure, combined with her unpopularity and the shifting political and religious landscape, set the stage for her eventual downfall. The marriage between Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII quickly began to show signs of strain, despite the excitement that accompanied their union. Anne's inability to produce a male heir, something Henry desperately wanted, was the primary source of tension in their relationship. After the birth of their daughter, Elizabeth, in September 1533, both Anne and Henry were initially disappointed. They had hoped for a son who would secure the Tudor dynasty, but Anne's failure to deliver a male heir put her position as queen in jeopardy. Elizabeth's birth was a significant event, as it ensured that Anne would be remembered in history as the mother of one of England's most famous monarchs. However, the disappointment surrounding the gender of the baby created a deep rift in Anne's marriage to Henry. Henry, whose obsession with producing a male heir had led him to divorce Katherine of Aragon, grew increasingly frustrated with Anne, especially as rumors began circulating that she might not be able to bear a son. The strain between Anne and Henry grew as Anne experienced 2 more pregnancies, both of which ended in miscarriages. These losses further compounded the pressure on Anne to provide a male heir and deepened the emotional distance between her and the king. Anne's failure to produce a son, combined with Henry's growing interest in other women, including his eventual mistress, Jane Seymour, led to the breakdown of their relationship. Despite the tension in their marriage, Anne remained a devoted mother to Elizabeth. She fought fiercely to secure her daughter's future and ensure that Elizabeth would inherit the throne one day. However, Anne's inability to give Henry the son he longed for ultimately contributed to her downfall. Anne Boleyn's downfall began in the spring of 1536, when her marriage to Henry VIII began to unravel. The pressure of failing to provide a male heir, combined with her increasingly strained relationship with the king, set the stage for her dramatic fall from grace. Henry, who had once been deeply in love with Anne, was now frustrated and infatuated with another woman, Jane Seymour, who he believed could give him the male heir he so desperately wanted. In the months leading up to Anne's arrest, rumors and political intrigue swirled at the English court. Anne's enemies, including Thomas Cromwell, sought to bring her down and end her influence over the king. Accusations of adultery, incest, and witchcraft were leveled against Anne, though there was little evidence to support these claims. Anne's brother, George Boleyn, and several members of her household were also accused of being involved in these alleged crimes. On May 2, 1536, Anne was arrested and taken to the Tower of London, where she was held in custody. The charges against her were both shocking and absurd. She was accused of having affairs with several men, including her brother, and of conspiring to kill the king in order to marry one of her lovers. Anne vehemently denied the charges and maintained her innocence throughout her imprisonment. Despite her protests, she was tried by a court of her peers, many of whom had been forced to go along with the king's wishes. Anne was found guilty on May 15th, and her execution was set for May 19th. Her downfall was a direct result of Henry's desire to marry Jane Seymour and secure a male heir, as well as the political forces at play in the court. Anne Boleyn's trial in May 1536 was a shocking and tragic event, as no Queen of England had ever been put on trial before. The charges against Anne were serious and fabricated, including accusations of adultery, incest with her brother, and plotting the murder of her husband, King Henry VIII. These claims were based on unreliable evidence, including forced confessions from her household members who were tortured to extract their testimonies. Anne's trial took place at the Tower of London, where she had been imprisoned since her arrest. During the trial, Anne did not have legal representation, and she was forced to defend herself. She spoke eloquently and clearly denied all charges. However, the outcome of the trial was never in doubt. The court, made up of nobles who were loyal to Henry, had already decided her fate. Anne was found guilty of treason, and the verdict was read out by her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. In a twist of irony, he suggested that Anne be either burned or beheaded, with the latter punishment ultimately being chosen. On May 16th, the court convened again to discuss Anne's fate, and her marriage to Henry was officially annulled by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. This annulment, which claimed that Anne had never been the lawful queen, further sealed her fate. She was condemned to death, and the king, now eager to marry Jane Seymour, had no hesitation in carrying out the execution. On May 19th, Anne was taken to the scaffold at the Tower of London. Despite the false charges against her, Anne faced her death with dignity. She gave a brief but moving speech, expressing her love for the king and asking for prayers. With one swift blow from the executioner's sword, Anne Boleyn's life was brought to an end. Anne Boleyn's legacy is one of complexity and lasting influence, both in England and beyond. Despite her tragic and untimely death, she is remembered as a key figure in the English Reformation. Anne's marriage to Henry VIII led directly to the establishment of the Church of England, as her refusal to be just another mistress, and her eventual marriage to Henry pushed him to break from the Catholic Church. This move forever altered the religious landscape of England and had ripple effects throughout Europe. Perhaps Anne's most significant legacy is her daughter, Elizabeth, who would go on to become one of England's greatest monarchs, ruling for 45 years and ushering in a golden age of English culture, exploration, and power. Anne's determination and ambition were passed on to Elizabeth, who, despite the challenges she faced, became a beloved and respected ruler. In the years following Anne's death, many people viewed her as a martyr, a victim of political intrigue, and the whims of a king who had grown tired of her. The downfall of Anne Boleyn is often seen as the result of her failure to provide a male heir, but in the eyes of history, her strength and her role in shaping England's future have overshadowed the tragic end of her life. Katherine Howard was born sometime between 1522 and 1525 in Lambeth, Surrey. Her father, Edmund Howard, was a nobleman struggling with financial difficulties, while her mother, Joyce Culpeper, came from a well-connected family. Katherine was one of 11 children who survived into adulthood. Despite being part of an influential family, Katherine's early life was marked by financial struggles. Her father had limited means and often found himself in debt. To improve their situation, he served as a local justice of the peace and later became comptroller of Calais. However, his financial troubles continued, forcing the family to rely on the support of relatives. When Katherine was about 6 years old, her mother passed away. Following the common practice of the time, some of the children were sent to live with extended family members. Katherine found herself in the care of Agnes Howard, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, a powerful noblewoman. In her household, Katherine was exposed to the customs and expectations of the English aristocracy. Although Katherine's exact birth year remains uncertain, historical records suggest she was still quite young when she was sent away to be raised in the Duchess's household. This move would play a crucial role in shaping her future, preparing her for a life at court and setting the stage for the dramatic events that would later unfold in her life. Katherine Howard was born into the powerful Howard family, one of the most influential noble families in England. Her father, Edmund Howard, was the younger son of the Duke of Norfolk, which gave Katherine a strong noble lineage. However, despite his aristocratic background, Edmund struggled financially. Unlike his wealthier relatives, he lacked the resources to support his large family comfortably. Katherine's mother, Joyce Culpeper, had previously been married and had 5 children before marrying Edmund. With 6 more children from her second marriage, Katherine grew up in a household with many siblings. Life in the Howard family was not always luxurious, as Edmund constantly faced financial difficulties. He relied on the generosity of relatives and took government positions, such as serving as comptroller of Calais, to improve his financial situation. After Catherine's mother passed away in 1528, her father remarried, and the children were placed in the care of other relatives. This was a common practice among noble families, as it ensured children received proper education and upbringing. Catherine was sent to live with Agnes Howard, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, a movie that significantly shaped her future. Under the care of the Dowager Duchess, Catherine was introduced to the customs and expectations of noble society. The household was filled with young wards, and Catherine's experiences there would influence the course of her life, preparing her for the world of the royal court. Catherine lived in a large household filled with many other young women from noble and gentry families. The girls were expected to follow strict rules, but the Duchess, who was in her 70s, struggled to manage them all. Catherine and her companions lived in the Maiden's Chamber, a dormitory-like setting where supervision was often lax. Without strict discipline, many of the young women enjoyed a degree of freedom rarely found in noble households. Despite the somewhat unstructured atmosphere, Catherine's noble status gave her privileges that other wards did not have. She was one of the few allowed to dine with the Duchess, and her Howard lineage gave her a higher status among the other girls. However, this freedom also exposed her to influences that would later contribute to her downfall. During her years in the Duchess's care, Catherine developed the charm and social skills that would later attract the attention of King Henry VIII. However, the lack of strict guidance also led to personal choices that would have serious consequences. Like many noble girls of the time, Katherine Howard received an education focused on preparing her for life at court. During her years in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, she learned essential skills expected of an aristocratic lady. These included proper manners, conversation, music, and dancing. Catherine was taught how to read and write, though her education in academic subjects was limited compared to the daughters of royalty. She studied basic literacy, but there is no evidence that she received formal training in history, philosophy, or foreign languages, as some noblewomen did. Instead, her lessons centered on etiquette, household management, and social graces, all of which were highly valued at court. One of Catherine's greatest strengths was her ability to dance. She became known for her grace and skill, impressing those around her with her performances. She also learned to play musical instruments, such as the virginal and the lute, though her interest in music seems to have faded over time. While Catherine's formal education was relatively simple, the social influences around her had a profound effect on her development. The lack of strict supervision in the Maiden's Chamber allowed the young girls to interact freely, sometimes leading to inappropriate relationships. Catherine's charm and playful nature made her popular, but her experiences in the Duchess's household would later be used against her when she became queen. During her time in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, Katherine Howard became involved in relationships that would later damage her reputation. The lack of strict supervision in the Maiden's Chamber allowed young women and men in the household to interact with little oversight. This environment played a role in shaping Catherine's early experiences with romance. One of her first known relationships was with Henry Mannix, a musician who was at least 10 years older than Catherine. Mannix was her music tutor, and their relationship soon became personal. Some historians argue that Mannix manipulated Catherine due to her young age, while others believe she may have willingly participated. Regardless, their interactions were considered improper for a noblewoman, and when Catherine discovered that Mannix had spoken about her dishonorably, she ended their relationship. Shortly afterward, Catherine formed a deeper attachment to Francis Derham, a secretary in the household. Their relationship was more serious, and they referred to each other as husband and wife. They exchanged love tokens, and evidence suggests they were physically involved. In Tudor society, such a relationship could have been considered a form of pre-marriage contract. However, the Dowager Duchess eventually discovered their affair and put an end to it. Although these relationships ended before Catherine went to court, rumors about them would resurface later, contributing to the tragic downfall that awaited her. In the autumn of 1539, Katherine Howard's life changed dramatically when she was chosen to serve as a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves, the new wife of King Henry VIII. This position placed Katherine in close proximity to the royal court, allowing her to gain favor and attention. Katherine's beauty, charm, and graceful manners quickly made her stand out. She was young, lively, and full of energy, a stark contrast to Anne of Cleves, who struggled to win Henry's affection. Before long, the king began to take a personal interest in Katherine. By early 1540, rumors spread that Henry was captivated by her, visiting her residence frequently and bestowing gifts upon her. The powerful Howard family saw Katherine as an opportunity to regain influence at court. Her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, encouraged her relationship with the king, hoping it would strengthen the family's position. Katherine, still a teenager, was likely guided by her relatives on how to please Henry and secure his favor. By the summer of 1540, Henry was actively seeking to annul his marriage to Anne of Cleves. Just days after the annulment was finalized, he married Katherine in a private ceremony on July 28th. At around 17 years old, Katherine became Queen of England, stepping into a role that would bring her both immense power and eventual tragedy. On July 28, 1540, Katherine Howard became the fifth wife of King Henry VIII. Their wedding took place in a private ceremony, only a few days after the king's marriage to Anne of Cleves was officially annulled. At around 17 years old, Katherine was now Queen of England, stepping into a position of immense power and responsibility. Henry, nearing 50, was completely infatuated with his young bride. He showered her with lavish gifts, including jewelry, fine clothing, and estates. The court quickly took notice of his open affection for Katherine, with ambassadors reporting how the king appeared revitalized by his new marriage. Many saw Katherine as a source of joy for Henry, who had endured years of disappointment and political struggles. Katherine's motto, "No other will but his," reflected her desire to please the king. She embraced her role as queen, participating in court festivities, dances, and public celebrations. Despite the luxuries of her new life, her position was not without challenges. The Howard family had high expectations for her, and political factions at court closely watched her every move. As the months passed, Henry's health continued to decline, and his unpredictable temper became more pronounced. Katherine, still young and inexperienced, found herself in a complicated position, expected to keep the aging king happy while navigating the dangerous politics of the Tudor court. As Queen of England, Katherine Howard embraced her new role with youthful energy and charm. She was adored for her beauty and grace, and the king, deeply infatuated, lavished her with jewels, fine clothing, and extravagant gifts. Courtiers noted his open affection, and Katherine quickly became the center of attention at court. Despite the splendor, Katherine's position was precarious. The Tudor court was a dangerous place, filled with political rivalries and secret alliances. Her powerful family expected her to strengthen their influence, while other factions sought to undermine her. She navigated courtly politics carefully, favoring those who supported her rise while trying to maintain the king's unwavering devotion. Katherine worked to build relationships with the king's children and even showed kindness toward his previous wife, Anne of Cleves. She interceded on behalf of prisoners, proving her compassionate nature. However, her youth and lack of political experience made her vulnerable to courtly manipulation. As the king's health worsened, she found herself isolated, surrounded by those eager to exploit her position. Though she appeared to be thriving, whispers about her past began circulating. Enemies at court saw an opportunity to bring her down, setting in motion the tragic chain of events that would lead to her downfall. Katherine Howard's time as queen came to a shocking and sudden end in late 1541 when accusations about her past relationships surfaced. A court informant, John Lascelles, brought forward claims that Catherine had engaged in inappropriate behavior before her marriage. His sister, Mary Lascelles, who had served in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, provided testimony detailing Catherine's past relationships with Henry Manox and Francis Dereham. When Archbishop Thomas Cranmer presented these accusations to King Henry VIII, the king was devastated. He had believed Catherine to be pure before their marriage, and these revelations wounded his pride deeply. Henry ordered an immediate investigation, and Catherine was placed under house arrest. As more details emerged, Francis Dereham and Thomas Culpeper, a close member of the king's household, were arrested and interrogated. Under pressure, Dereham admitted to his past relationship with Catherine, while Culpeper acknowledged that he had been involved with the Queen after her marriage. Although there was no definitive proof of adultery, Catherine's secret meetings with Culpeper and her past with Dereham were enough for Henry to consider her unfaithful. In Tudor law, a queen's infidelity was considered treason. By early 1542, Parliament passed an Act of Attainder against Catherine, sealing her fate. The once beloved queen was stripped of her titles and sent to the Tower of London to await execution. On February 13, 1542, Katherine Howard was led to the scaffold at the Tower of London. Despite her young age, she faced her execution with remarkable composure. The night before, she requested to practice placing her head on the block, determined to meet her fate with dignity. When the moment arrived, she spoke calmly, accepting responsibility for her actions and asking for prayers. She did not defend herself or accuse others, but instead followed the traditional execution speech, expressing regret and loyalty to the king. Within moments, the axe fell, ending the brief and tragic life of Henry VIII's fifth wife. She was buried in an unmarked grave in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, near Anne Boleyn, another queen executed by Henry. Catherine's downfall has long been debated by historians. Earlier accounts painted her as foolish and reckless, while more recent perspectives suggest she was a victim of an unforgiving system that controlled women's lives. Some argue that she was manipulated from a young age, while others believe she was simply a girl who made mistakes in a world that allowed her no second chances. What do you think about these three remarkable women who shaped history in their own unique ways? Was Catherine of Aragon a steadfast queen, wronged by fate, or a figure caught in the tides of power? Did Anne Boleyn's ambition make her a visionary reformer, or a calculating player in a dangerous game? And was Katherine Howard a naive victim of circumstance, or a young woman whose choices sealed her tragic end? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed these stories, please like, share, and subscribe for more historical insights. Thank you so much for watching. Among history's most remarkable figures are those whose lives reshaped the world around them. Today, I bring you the stories of three extraordinary women: Catherine of Aragon, whose resolve defined a kingdom; Anne Boleyn, whose ambition altered England's destiny; and Katherine Howard, whose youth met a tragic fate. Let's begin with Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII. Catherine of Aragon was born on December 16, 1485, in the palace of Alcalá de Henares, just outside of Madrid. Her birth name was Catalina, but she became known as Catherine after moving to England. Her father, King Ferdinand